The amazing thing about this election is that the Russians are torn between having sort of their own Russian way of electing a leader, which is basically just, let's all go to the polls and pull for the guy that we're told to pull for. Because, for example, in December, in the Duma elections, the genius thing that they did was, you didn't vote for individual delegates. You voted for the party that then assigned the delegates. So since you voted for the party, the first name on the ballot was Putin's. So basically, even if you weren't voting for Putin, you were voting for Putin. So the election turned into a referendum on Putin's rule, and there you go. So this time, it's almost the same thing, because every opponent is a bit of a joke. There's this man named Bogdanov, who's this flamboyant sort of dude who wears this Robert Plant-esque big hair. And then, of course, the old stalwarts, Gennady Zyuganov, who's this, old communist. And communists are, in fact, still, shockingly, the only viable opposition there. And then there's, Zhirinovsky, who's this, you know who Zhirinovsky is. He is this kind of cross between Rush Limbaugh and Al Sharpton, and kind of a professional rabble-rouser. Who always seems very comfortable, actually, in near power, no matter what, no matter what regime he's under. So these guys are basically clowns, and there's only one possible choice, Medvedev. But at the same time, it's amazing to see that the Russians are kind of adamant about keeping up appearances of an election. There's a get out the youth vote initiative, for example. I've seen stickers on bus stops and in shop windows that say, supposedly youth-friendly things like the election day is as much of a holiday as your birthday or something, and there's a picture of the birthday cake, or potentially meaningful one that says, the elections, all the big questions, won't be decided through the internet, and there's like a picture of the sort of OK button on the computer or something, So there's a get out the youth vote initiative. There's there's editorials. So there's an amazing kind of simulacrum of excitement that comes exclusively from top down, but it is something to be seen, to be believed. Well, what messages are we talking about? The message is, the only message that resonates with the public is strong Russia, basically. Strong Russia, some money in people's pockets, those are the messages that resonate. The thing about the Russian newfound strength is this is almost entirely America's doing, or the West's. I think in the 90s, the Russians have been, on the state level and on the business level and on the media level, they've been condescended to and they've been patronized in ways that Americans have a very vague idea about. So the thing to remember about Russians is they feel incredibly infantilized by the West. So anybody who comes along and and does these symbolic gestures, like baring the sort of the energy teeth a little bit, and playing hardball on Kosovo and becoming a major player on Iran, it's almost irrelevant what these causes are. What's relevant is that Russia is throwing its weight around again. And if the West was a little smarter, they would actually allow Russia to do that in kind of mutually agreed, safe situations. For example, North Korea and Iran, where Russia can, act very macho and actually be useful at the same time. But, unfortunately, the West hasn't been handling it too well, and now, we're reaping the fruits of that. Well, yeah, I mean, Russia has some interesting rules for the election process itself. They are actually harder on electioneering, right? right, sort of in the run-up to the elections than the Americans are, but at the same time, it's like a funhouse inversion of our electoral process because there's for example, no debates, right, or the television that's covering the candidates in the following way. This is something that I've heard on Russian TV. This was kind of priceless. They were basically saying, the anchor on Channel One was saying, well, Zyuganov, the communist opponent of Medvedev, spent the day doing, this promotional appearance here and promotional appearance there, and Bogdanov did that, and only one candidate was brave enough to forego this ridiculous charade and to concentrate instead on working for the well-being of the Russian people. That candidate was Dmitry Medvedev. So basically, they create a situation where there is no campaign to speak of, and Medvedev comes from such a position of power, kind of magic authority, if you will, that the very fact that he doesn't engage in campaigning makes him look more dignified, because campaigning is just jostling for second place. And, that's the way people seem to like it. The European monitors for the elections are actually going to be boycotting the elections, as you might know. And it's not that they have been kicked out, but, right now it's basically, it's one of those ridiculous Soviet-style situations when Russia says, well, it was their goal to be, kicked out. It was their goal to boycott us from the beginning so that they could make a political statement. And what do you answer to that? And then, of course, there's this big flap with the so-called European Institute that was also going to provide some monitoring, and they were just kicked out of their building, citing violations of fire code, or something like that. So obviously, there are attempts to minimize the monitoring of the elections. The funny thing about it for me is that they don't really have to do it, because I believe that people will genuinely vote for Medvedev. And that's the amazing thing about Russian elections, because the popularity of Mr. Putin is such that I don't see a point of rigging them. He would still win, and his party would still win in December, and Medvedev would still win maybe by 65% of the vote, not 87 or 89 or whatever they're going to receive. But I suppose the reasoning inside the Kremlin is that you just can't leave these things to chance.